All right, so last time we got our first project functioning. We managed to create a script that controlled the size of a game object by an amount that we specified. Um, and that introduced us to a lot of concepts in terms of, what are components, what are game objects, what are scripts, how do they all interact together? Um, but everything that we've done up to this point has been about a single script and a single game object, and that was just because of just to focus on the important pieces in order. But moving forward, one of the most important things to understand is how different scripts and different game objects interact together, and how you can deal with multiple objects, and what are the different kind of pros and cons of the different ways of doing that. So we're going to start our second project, and this project should go quite a bit more quickly because we don't have to introduce the process along the way. So let's just start with here's what we're going to try to do. So right now we have our scale changer component, and that works with a single game object and a single script. What we want to be able to do is create a group of game objects, and then using a single script, change all of those game objects the same amount and with the same speed. And so that's what we're going to try to do. And that's there's not that much to actually executing that in the code, but in terms of the different concepts underlying that, about how that's achieved, it's actually fairly involved. So what we're gonna start getting into the get component process, which is the way of accessing other scripts, and we're also going to learn our way around arrays and the different types of arrays that are available in Unity and how to interact with them. So let's get started with that and jump right on over into so go over into your text editor, and let's start working on our prep write-up, because we now have a set of requirements that I gave, and we're going to go through that process again. So blank canvas, and here's the requirements as I came up with them. Of course, you could put this a different way, but just that we want to enable a designer to designate a certain number of game objects and then have those game objects be changed by an amount that we specify at a speed that we specify. So these are the requirements, okay? And this is what's going to happen with scripting a lot of the time is instead of those coming from me, they're going to come from you. You're going to say, oh, shit, I want to make this thing happen. That's the requirements. And the next stage is when you don't have these tutorials to work off of is, okay, what do I not know how to do in this requirement, right? Because if you can do that, if you can say, okay, I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z, and then you can go and figure out how to do those things, you can essentially figure out how to do anything you want. So what I'd like you to do next is look at these requirements and then think to yourself, okay, what do I not know how to do? And then I want you to actually write those down in the form of a question. How do we X? And think of as many of those as you can in terms of this specific thing that you don't know. What are the elements of this that you don't know how to do? And if pause the video here and then take those and post whatever you come up with into the HipChat and then continue on. All right, so if all went according to plan, you were racking your brain about what are the different unknowns of these requirements, and you posted them in HipChat, and now you've come back. And here's the two main things that we are wondering about in terms of how to let a designer specify as many game objects that they want and then scale those game objects by a specified amount. So there's two things. We know how to kind of set variables in a script, and we know how to kind of use a script to control a game object, but we don't actually know how to specify multiple scripts, right? We haven't encountered that process yet. So that we don't know how to do, and that's something that we need to do. And I think you probably have an inkling about how this is going to be done, but I hope you just understand what we're doing here in terms of for these simple things, this process will seem a little bit, overcomplicated. But when you start to get into really into the more challenging aspects of programming, this will really help. So we don't know how to designate multiple objects to scale, and we don't actually know how to. We're going to have one script, and we're going to need to control the scale changer script from outside of that script, and we don't actually know how to do that. So those are the two unknowns that we have. Everything else we should be able to do. We can set variables. We can do all that other stuff. We can make things scale. So those are the two unknowns. So the next step then is to go and do research on those unknowns and try to find potential methods of achieving those tasks. So what I'd like you to do next then is pause the video here, not now, after I'm done talking, and I'd like you to Google around for potential solutions to these unknowns. And I'd like you to keep track of the search queries that you tried. Like, just copy it into a text document. Show me the search query that you tried, and then any results that you found that you thought were relevant. And then if you could just take a note of, really simple, why did I think this was a relevant result? What went into the decision that, okay, this is, I think, a good solution. And then try to don't spend any more than 15 minutes on it. Don't go crazy with it, because we're going to do this a lot more. And then just take that text document and do it as a Google Doc, and then just share the Google Doc in HipChat. And then when you're done with that, we'll keep going forward.